He was standing at the edge of the dock, shaking. The water was still, the sky gray, and the only sound was the quiet creak of wood beneath our feet. My grandson's fingers wrapped around mine, tighter than they ever had before, and then he whispered, barely louder than the wind, "Don't trust him." For 8 years, that child had not spoken a single word. Doctors said it was neurological. Therapists called it trauma. Family members shrugged and said, maybe he's just different. But in that moment, on that dock, his voice came out like a tiny crack in a dam that had been holding back years of secrets. And everything I thought I knew about my family, about loyalty, about love, shattered. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This is my story of betrayal, and if you've ever trusted the wrong person, hit that subscribe button because you are not alone. Here is how it happened. It started quietly. Isn't that how betrayal always starts? No thunder, no alarms, just life moving like it always does. Breakfasts, text messages, laughter that feels real until you realized it was covering something else. My son had called me weeks earlier, breathless with excitement. "Mom, I finally booked it. 10 days, somewhere warm. I need this break. Work's been killing me." He laughed, the kind of laugh that used to sound like freedom when he was a boy. He asked if I could watch his son while he traveled. Of course I said yes. I always said yes. I've been saying yes my whole life, even when it cost me. My grandson arrived with his little backpack and his quiet eyes. He walked like a shadow, soft, careful, almost apologetic for existing. He hadn't spoken since he was a toddler. We communicated in nods, gestures, the language of patience. I cooked his favorite meals. I laid out his clothes. I tried to be the calm he never seemed to have. And I thought, deeply, that silence was simply part of who he was. Then, something strange happened. On the 3rd day, while he sat at the kitchen table drawing crooked houses with windows too dark, I picked up my phone and scrolled through my channel. I was reading comments on my YouTube the other day, and I realized I wasn't the only one. People were sharing stories about broken families, stories about lies, stories about how those closest to us are sometimes the ones who hurt us most. I felt less alone, but I also felt uneasy because a sentence kept repeating inside my head. "You're missing something." That night, my grandson didn't sleep. He paced. He stood at the hallway corner and stared down it like something waited there. When I asked if he wanted water, he shook his head, too fast, as if terrified to make noise. The next morning, I found claw marks on the inside of his bedroom door. Tiny ones, as if small hands had tried desperately to get out. I told myself maybe he was just restless, maybe he had nightmares, maybe kids just do strange things. But deep down, my stomach twisted. The 4th day, a man came to the door. He said he was a friend of my son, said he just wanted to drop something off, said my son forgot it before his flight. He smiled too easily. His eyes moved too fast. He called me by my first name, though I'd never seen him before. My grandson stood behind me, frozen, and then he did something he had never done. He hid. Not like a shy child hides. No, he vanished behind the kitchen counter, so quickly and so silently it was like an instinct he'd learned the hard way. The man noticed. His smile faltered for a second, just a second, and then returned. He left a small envelope on the table and walked out. I locked the door immediately. My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside was nothing but a folded receipt from a hardware store. No note, no explanation, just one line highlighted in yellow. Padlock, heavy duty. That night I sat on the couch, staring at that receipt, trying to force logic into something that felt anything but logical. My mind kept going back to the door scratches, the pacing, the silence that wasn't peaceful anymore. It was haunted. Then, near midnight, I heard footsteps. Not in the hallway, not in the kitchen. Outside, right below the window. Slow. Measured, deliberate. My heart thudded against my ribs as I crept toward the blinds, peeking just enough to see shadow movement across the yard. A silhouette, tall, familiar, waiting. I didn't wake my grandson. I didn't turn on lights. I stood there, breathing in shallow little gulps, and prayed I was imagining things. Morning came like nothing had happened. But something had shifted. My grandson wouldn't let go of my sleeve all day. He clung to me like he was the last safe place on earth. His eyes kept flicking toward the door, and every time a car passed outside, his shoulders flinched. And then, on the fifth evening, everything cracked open. We were walking by the lake near the house, something we did sometimes when the world felt too loud. He liked the water. He liked routine. The dock was old, worn, soft under our shoes. He tugged on my hand, hard, pulling me to stop. He looked up. His lips trembled. 8 years of silence sat behind those eyes, and then, like a miracle twisted with dread, he spoke. "Don't trust him." 2 words, but they sliced through the air. I knelt down, hand shaking, my throat tightened. "Sweetheart, who?" His chest rose and fell too fast. His eyes darted, left, right, behind me, as though something could appear at any second. He swallowed, struggling, as if saying more could cost him something terrible. And then he said one more word. A name. Not the man at the door. Not a stranger, a name that made my stomach drop so hard I had to grab the railing to steady myself. My son. The world tilted. Everything I thought I knew about those last 8 years suddenly felt like a lie I'd been living inside without realizing it. And the worst part was, I had no idea what I was about to uncover. Because in that moment, on that quiet dock, with the lake breathing slowly beneath us, I realized my grandson wasn't afraid of the dark. He was afraid of the truth, and I had just opened the door. The name hung between us like a thundercloud. My son. The boy I raised, the man I trusted, the father who was supposed to protect his child. My mouth went dry. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Like the lake had suddenly risen and swallowed the air around me. My grandson kept holding my hand, squeezing tighter, like he was terrified that if he let go, the words he had spoken would disappear, and maybe I'd pretend I never heard them. "Sweetheart," I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. "What do you mean?" He shook his head. Not a little shake, a hard one, like he was warning me, stop. Like he had already learned at 8 years old that telling the truth could be dangerous. He looked back down the dock, toward the tree line, as if someone might be listening. And then, just as quickly as he had opened up, the words vanished. His lips closed, his eyes glazed. He slipped back into silence like it was armor he had worn for years. The miracle was gone. The fear stayed. We walked home without speaking. The air felt colder. My skin felt wrong, like the world was suddenly off balance and I was trying to pretend it wasn't. Inside the house, I made tea just to have something to do with my hands. My mind replayed everything. The receipt, the scratches on the door, the pacing at night, the man at the door, the footsteps outside, and now my son's name. I wanted to deny it. I wanted to say, no, my son wouldn't hurt him. My son wouldn't do anything that would make a child afraid to speak. But something inside me, something honest, something old, whispered back, haven't you ignored warning signs before? I have, more times than I care to admit. That night, after I tucked my grandson into bed and left his door cracked open, I stood in the hallway listening, waiting. The house had a sound to it, an old house creak, a soft hum, the refrigerator ticking. But beneath that, I swear I could feel something else, like the echo of fear lingering in the walls. At around 2 a.m, I heard it again. Tiny footsteps, not moving, shifting. I walked quietly to his room. He wasn't in bed. My heart lurched. I found him sitting on the floor by the closet, knees pulled to his chest, rocking gently, staring into the dark space inside as though something lived there and he was making sure it stayed contained. "Hey," I whispered, kneeling beside him. "What are you doing here?" His eyes flicked toward the closet door, then back to me, pleading without sound. I opened the closet slowly. Inside, clothes, boxes, old shoes, and a small dent on the wall at the back. A fist-sized dent. Another one beneath it. And beneath that, a faint smear. Dark. Old. My skin crawled. I closed the door gently. "Come on," I said softly. "Let's go back to bed." He hesitated, then shook his head. Not sleeping there. Not again. So I let him curl up on the couch. I stayed nearby, pretending to scroll my phone while my mind screamed. I needed answers. But asking my son directly felt like stepping into a storm blindfolded. Instead, I did something different. I went back to the envelope, the receipt. I flipped it over. On the back, barely visible, there was an impression, like someone had pressed a pen too hard on whatever paper had been written above it. I tilted it toward the lamp. A fragment appeared. Numbers, dates, something that looked like B, shed, key, don't forget. A shed. We have one behind the house. I hadn't stepped into it in months. Morning came with a bright sky that felt completely wrong for the heaviness in my chest. My grandson ate breakfast quietly, eyes on the table. His fork scraped softly against the plate, like he was afraid even sounds could betray him. "I'm going outside for a minute," I told him gently. "Stay here, okay?" He looked up sharply, almost panicked, but he nodded. I walked into the backyard. The shed sat near the fence, paint peeling, padlock hanging loose. Old, not heavy duty, not the one from the receipt. Dust coated the handle. Still, as I pulled the door open, I swear the air changed temperature. Inside, gardening tools, old furniture, boxes stacked too neatly, and then a second lock on the inside, a bolt. Why would a shed need a bolt on the inside? I stepped in further, heart pounding. There was a small mattress pushed under the workbench, thin, stained, a blanket balled at the corner. Next to it, a toy car, scratched, missing a wheel. I covered my mouth. It hit me all at once. This wasn't storage. Someone had slept here. Someone small. Someone who didn't have a choice. I had to steady myself on the wall because rage rose so fast it made me dizzy. My son? No, No, I didn't want to believe it. But the truth doesn't ask permission to exist. It just sits there, waiting for you to finally look. I stepped back out, sunlight burning against my eyes, and closed the door quietly, like if I slammed it, the past would scream. When I headed back inside, my grandson was standing at the sliding glass door watching me. He didn't blink. He looked at the shed, then at me, and for the first time since the dock, I saw something new in his expression. Relief. Like he had been waiting for someone, anyone, to finally see what he had been living with. I knelt in front of him. "Did you sleep in there?" I asked softly. His steward stared at the floor. His throat moved. He didn't speak, but his shoulders trembled, and that was answer enough. My hand shook, not from fear now, but from something sharper. Anger, grief, guilt, because somewhere along the way, I must have missed this. How many holidays did I smile through? How many times did I hug my son and call him a good father? How many times did I assume silence meant peace? I had no idea. And worse, I didn't yet know why. Why lock a child away? Why punish silence with more silence? That's when my phone buzzed. My son. A text. "Hey, everything good? I might come back earlier than planned." The room tilted again. Earlier. He was coming back. And suddenly all the pieces, the footsteps outside, the man at the door, the highlighted receipt, rearranged into something far more dangerous. This wasn't over. This wasn't in the past. Whatever had been happening was coming back to my door. And I had one terrifying thought echoing in my chest. If my grandson spoke now, what would my son do to keep him quiet again? I looked at the child sitting on my couch, small hands tucked into his sleeves, eyes flicking to the window like he could already feel his father drawing closer. And I knew, whatever truth I was about to uncover, it wasn't just going to break my heart. It was going to test every choice I had ever made as a mother, and possibly everything I believed about love. The message on my phone pulsed on the screen like a warning light. I might come back earlier than planned. Earlier. My hands tightened around the phone. Somewhere in the house, a pipe clicked, the fridge hummed, and life pretended to be normal. But nothing felt normal anymore. I stared at the text and realized something terrifying. He wasn't asking. He was notifying. As if this house, this child, my life were things he owned. I typed back slowly. "Everything's fine. Enjoy your trip." A lie, deliberate, because something inside me said, "Don't let him know you know." Not yet. My grandson sat curled into the corner of the couch, watching me with those wide, quiet eyes, eyes that had seen far too much. He didn't ask what the message said. He didn't need to. He felt it, the way animals sense storms before the clouds arrive. I sat next to him. For a moment, I didn't say anything. I just breathed, slow and steady, so he would see calm, even though fear was pounding inside me like thunder. Finally, I whispered, "You're safe here. Do you hear me?" He blinked once and nodded. But I saw it. That wasn't safety. That was hope, tiptoeing in cautiously, unsure if it was welcome. And something inside me hardened. I wasn't going to be silent anymore. Not like I had been with my own life. Not like I had been as a young mother making excuses for anger, for absences, for words that cut deeper than fists. I stood up and walked into the kitchen. I needed answers, real ones, not just suspicions and half guesses. If I confronted my son without proof, he would twist things. He always had that ability to bend reality until you questioned your own memory. So I started searching. Drawers, cabinets, the hallway closet. I moved quietly, listening for every sound. In my son's old room, the one he still used when visiting, I found something. Not obvious, not dramatic. A small metal box tucked behind photo albums. Locked. My fingers trembled as I carried it to the dining table. I almost felt ridiculous, a grown woman preparing to pick through her own child's secrets. But I couldn't back away. Not now. It took 10 minutes and a thin butter knife to pry the latch. The lid popped open. Inside, receipts, prescription bottles, a flash drive, a folded social worker's card. I froze. A social worker? I looked closer. The card had scribbled words on the back. Follow-up. Refused. Refused? My throat tightened. I laid everything out carefully. The prescription bottles weren't for my grandson. They were for my son. Anti-anxiety meds, sleep aids, painkillers, all filled from different clinics, different dates. A pattern. A spiral. Under the flash drive was something else. A small notebook, spiral-bound, bent. The first few pages were ripped out so violently the wire binding had warped. The remaining pages were filled with handwriting, frantic, sharp, like the ink itself was angry. Fragments. He won't stop crying at night. Says he sees things. Liar. Needs discipline. He has to learn. I sank back in my chair, nausea flooding through me. Discipline. Discipline that left scratches on doors. Discipline that taught a child silence. I pressed my palms to my eyes. How did I miss this? I whispered. Memory answered, uninvited. My son as a boy, standing in the hallway after his father had yelled, face pale, eyes cold with a hardness I hadn't known a child could carry. Me telling myself, he's just upset, he'll grow out of it. Except some things don't grow out. Some things grow deeper. I took the flash drive, plugged it into my laptop, and waited. A folder opened. Dates. 8 months, 10 months, a year back. Videos. My hand covered my mouth before I even clicked. I shouldn't watch this, I thought, but I had to. The first clip was grainy, a room, dim, my grandson hunched on the mattress in the shed, knees to his chest, while my son's voice filled the background. Calm, too calm. Stop pretending. We both know you can speak. Silence. Say it. Say you're lying. The boy shook his head. My son sighed. Not disappointed. Annoyed. Then the video ended. I couldn't breathe. I clicked another. My grandson sitting at the table, staring at a glass of water, my son sliding it slightly out of reach each time he tried to grab it. Use your words. Nothing. No words, no water. The clip cut abruptly. My hands shook so badly the screen blurred. That wasn't parenting. That wasn't help. That was control disguised as therapy. And suddenly it snapped together. The luck, the shed, the insomnia, the terror. My grandson hadn't chosen silence. Silence had been beaten into him with psychological chains. The room swayed. I slammed the laptop shut just as footsteps padded softly down the hall.
He stood there, small, hesitant, like he thought he might be interrupting something forbidden. I forced my breathing to steady. "Come here," I said gently. He climbed onto the chair beside me. I didn't show him the videos. I wouldn't traumatize him more. Instead, I asked carefully, "When you were with Daddy, did he make you stay quiet?" His eyes tensed. He nodded. Then lifted both hands, pressed them flat across his mouth, and held them there. My chest cracked. He held his hands so tight his knuckles paled. Then he lowered them slowly and showed me something else. Tiny, faded scars on the inside of his wrists. I nearly broke. Not cuts, indentations, like zip tie marks, like something had bound him when he struggled. My voice shook. "Did he tie you?" A tear slipped down his cheek. Another nod. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it in my ears. I wanted to scream, break something, drive to wherever my son was and demand every answer until he had none left. But I couldn't, because the child in front of me needed calm, not rage. I wiped his tear gently with my thumb. "You are never, ever going back to that." Not a promise, a vow. He leaned into me for the first time, head against my shoulder, body trembling like a small animal finally allowed to rest. And then my phone buzzed again. Another text. "Hey, flight changed. Landing tonight." Tonight. He was coming. Too soon. Every nerve in my body lit with danger. I stood abruptly and began locking windows, double-checking doors, scanning the house like it was unfamiliar territory. I grabbed the laptop, the notebook, the receipt, everything, and hid them beneath the loose floorboard under my bed, something my son didn't know existed. My mind raced. I needed someone else aware, someone official, someone stronger than just a worried grandmother. I picked up the social worker's card. My fingers hovered over the phone. What if I was wrong? What if I was overreacting? What if my son walked in and smiled and turned this whole thing into a misunderstanding that made me look paranoid? But then I remembered. The shed mattress, the bolt on the inside, the videos, the scars, the words on the dock. Don't trust him. I dialed. Voicemail. My voice was barely above a whisper as I spoke. "Hi, I'm calling about a child safety concern. It's urgent. Please, call me back." I hung up and set the phone down. Seconds passed. Minutes. Nothing. The house felt alive with tension, the walls listening, the air waiting. Outside, the sky darkened slowly, painting the backyard in long shadows that reached towards the shed. He stepped further inside, the door closing behind him with a soft click that sounded louder than any slam. My son dropped his bag by the wall like he always did, familiar, casual, practiced. He scanned the room, just a second too long, eyes passing over my grandson, then me, then the windows, like he was taking inventory. "Wow," he said lightly. "House looks good. You look tired, though, Mom. Everything okay?" His voice was smooth, gentle, the kind of tone you'd trust if you didn't know better. Once upon a time, I trusted that voice with my whole heart. Now, it made my skin crawl. My grandson had gone completely still, the way animals freeze when they sense a predator. His fingers gripped my arm, not shaking, not moving, just holding on. I forced a smile. "You're back early," I said. He shrugged. "Things changed. Thought I'd surprise you." Surprise.
That word crawled down my spine. He moved toward the kitchen, opening the fridge, peeking inside like he lived here, like this was his territory, like nothing about silence, scars, sheds, or fear existed. "How's he been?" he asked casually, nodding toward his son without looking at him. I hesitated. "He's been quiet." A smirk flickered, gone as soon as it appeared. "Yeah, that's normal." He turned then, finally, and crouched down, meeting my grandson's eyes. "Hey, buddy, miss me?" My grandson didn't move, didn't nod, didn't blink. My son's smile tightened, just barely. "Come on," he said softly. "Don't be rude. Give Daddy a hug." The child's breathing sped up. He didn't go to him. He pressed closer into my side. My son's jaw flexed. He hit it with another smile as he stood. "Looks like someone's cranky." Inside my chest, my heart was pounding so hard it hurt. He walked past us into the hallway, eyes flicking toward rooms, checking, assessing. "What have you two been up to?" he asked over his shoulder. "Anything interesting?" Interesting. My mind flashed to the shed, the notebook, the videos, the receipt, the phone call to the social worker. I swallowed. "Just normal things. Walks, movies, cooking." He nodded. "Good. Structure's important." He disappeared into the guest room, and I heard the sound of his bag unzipping. My grandson tugged my sleeve hard. His mouth moved, no sound, but I understood anyway. "Don't leave me." "I'm here," I whispered. I followed my son slowly, stopping at the doorway. He was unpacking like someone settling in, not visiting. Clothes in drawers, phone charger plugged in, keys on the dresser, like he intended to stay. "Did something happen?" I asked carefully. "With work?" He didn't look at me. "Nothing I couldn't handle." I studied him, the tightness around his mouth, the faint circles under his eyes, the exhaustion wrapped in something harder, meaner. He zipped the empty bag and finally met my gaze. "Why?" he asked lightly. "You worried?" I held his eyes. "Yes." His expression didn't change, but something behind it did, like a shadow shifting. "Don't be," he said simply. "Everything's under control." The words landed heavy. Control. Control had been his language for years. Control disguised as care. Control dressed like responsibility. Control that left scars. He brushed past me into the hall. "I'm going to check the backyard," he said casually. "Make sure everything's where I left it." My stomach dropped. The shed. My grandson let out a small strangled sound, not quite a cry, and shook his head faintly. I stepped in front of my son instinctively. "Why?" He frowned. "Because it's my house too. Why are you being weird?" He tried to move past me. I placed my hand on his chest. "Leave it." His eyes sharpened. "Mom, move." Old habits clawed at me, the part of me that flinched at confrontation, that wanted to keep peace, to smooth things over, to avoid conflict. But another part, the part that had heard, "Don't trust him," stood firm. No. The air tightened. We stared at each other, a standoff years in the making. Then he smiled, slow, patronizing. "Okay," he said lightly. "Relax. I'll check it tomorrow." He walked back to the living room and dropped on the couch, grabbing the remote like he owned the silence. News flickered onto the screen. Cars outside passed. Traffic hummed. Normal. Completely, utterly wrong. My phone buzzed suddenly on the table. Unknown number. I answered quickly, turning my back. "Hello?" A woman's voice, calm but firm. "Hi, this is Child Protective Services returning your call. You mentioned an urgent concern." My breath stuck in my throat. I moved quietly toward the kitchen, keeping my voice low. Yes, thank you for calling. What's that?" My son called out lightly from the couch. "Telemarketer again?" I forced my voice steady. No, just appointment reminder. The social worker continued. Can you speak freely right now? My eyes flicked to the living room. He was watching the TV, but his body was angled toward me, listening. No, I whispered. Okay, she said softly. Do you feel there is an immediate danger to the child? My gaze fell to my grandson, silent, rigid, holding his breath. Yes. Can you bring the child somewhere safe tonight, somewhere outside that home? My mind raced. Where? Who? Neighbors? No. Friends? None near enough. Hotel? Could I leave without him noticing? The social worker continued. If you can get to the nearest police station or hospital, do so. If not, stay where you are and call emergency services if anything escalates. I'll file this immediately. My throat tightened. Please, please, I whispered. We will follow up as soon as possible. You did the right thing. The call ended. I set the phone down gently. My son muted the TV. Who was that? He asked quietly. Too quiet. A reminder, I repeated, heart beating wildly. He studied me, longer than before. His eyes flicked to the phone, then to my grandson. His smile returned, but it didn't reach his eyes. You know, he said softly, it's funny. Every time I leave, something feels different when I come back, like people have been talking. I forced a laugh that sounded wrong. Paranoid much? He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You'd tell me if there was something I needed to know, right, Mom? The way he said it wasn't a question, it was a warning. My mouth went dry. Of course. He nodded slowly and unmuted the TV, but his attention wasn't on it anymore. He was watching us, waiting. The night stretched long. I cooked dinner with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. He ate like nothing was wrong. He asked about work. He talked about traffic. He complimented the food. Everything he said was normal. Every second felt dangerous. My grandson barely touched his plate. When it was time for bed, my son stood and stretched. I'll tuck him in. No, I blurted. Both of them froze. I swallowed. I mean, he's used to me doing it while you were gone. Routine, you know? Helps him sleep. My son stared at me for a moment, then nodded. Sure, routine. He went to the bathroom. I knelt beside the couch where my grandson was pretending to be sleepy. I whispered, Tonight, you're sleeping in my room, on the bed, right beside me. His eyes widened. Then he nodded, fast, relieved. We lay there in the dark later, my arm around him, his head tucked under my chin. I listened. House shifting, pipes ticking, footsteps down the hall. He paused outside my door. The shadow under the crack stayed. Seconds passed. Then the shadow moved away. I exhaled slowly, eyes burning. My phone screen glowed silently on the nightstand. No new messages, no help yet. Somewhere around midnight, my grandson's breathing finally slowed. Sleep, fragile, uneasy, claimed him. I stared into the darkness, every nerve awake. And for the first time, I let myself whisper the thought I'd been avoiding since the dock. What if the boy who once looked at me with wonder had grown into a man capable of destroying everything he touched? The ceiling felt like it was pressing down. The house felt smaller. And I knew, tomorrow or the next hour, something would break. Because secrets don't sit quietly forever. They snap, they burn, they take everything with them. And I was standing at the edge of that fire, trying to hold a child behind me, while the person on the other side was my own son. Morning arrived like a lie. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, warm, gentle, as if the world had decided nothing was wrong. But I woke with a start, heart pounding, because I hadn't really slept. I'd hovered in that half-awake place all night, listening for footsteps, waiting for something to break. My grandson was still curled against me, one hand gripping the fabric of my shirt even in sleep, like he was afraid I might disappear. I carefully slipped out of bed and tucked the blanket around him. Outside the bedroom, the house was quiet. Too quiet. I stepped into the hallway. Voices used to fill this house. Laughter, arguments, life. Now there was only tension, stretched thin, like a thread that could snap if I breathed too loudly. I found my son in the kitchen. He was standing by the window, staring into the backyard, into the direction of the shed, coffee cup in hand, completely still. He didn't look at me when he spoke. "Did you go out there yesterday?" My chest tightened. "Out where?" He tilted his head slightly. "The shed." My tongue felt heavy. "I was organizing some boxes." He finally turned. His expression was calm. His eyes were not. "Without telling me?" I felt myself shrinking, just for a second, old habits rising, explaining, apologizing, smoothing things over. Then I remembered the mattress, the scars, the whisper at the dock. I straightened. "I don't need permission to walk into my own backyard." The silence stretched. He smiled, soft, patient, the way someone smiles at a child who doesn't understand the rules. "Of course not," he said. "I just wish you'd let me know. There's stuff in there that isn't safe." He took a sip of coffee. Tools, chemicals, things that could hurt someone. We both knew he wasn't talking about himself. He was talking about the boy still sleeping in my room, the boy he had already hurt. He set the mug down. "So," he said lightly, "what'd you do all week?" Something about the way he asked is what made me realize he wasn't curious. He was assessing damage, trying to see how much truth had slipped through his fingers. I kept my voice even. "Nothing out of the ordinary." He studied my face. He could always read people, twist conversations, turn guilt into a mirror. "You seem stressed," he said after a moment. "Maybe you shouldn't watch so many of those dramatic videos online. You get ideas." Those words stung. Not because he was right, because he had said them before, years ago, about his father, about every instinct I ever had that something was wrong. "You're overreacting. You're imagining things. You get ideas." I swallowed back old shame. "I'm fine." He held my gaze longer than necessary, then nodded. "Good." Footsteps padded softly down the hall. My grandson. He stopped in the doorway, bare feet, messy hair, eyes flicking immediately to his father like prey sensing a trap. "Morning," my son said brightly, too brightly. "Come give Daddy a hug." He froze. My stomach twisted. He didn't move toward him. He moved behind me. My son's smile thinned. "That's rude," he said quietly. I stepped slightly to the side, enough to put myself between them. "He's still waking up. Give him space." My son's jaw clenched. Subtle, but I saw it. He took a sip of coffee. "Fine." We ate breakfast at the table together, or pretended to. My grandson pushed scrambled eggs around his plate. I drank coffee that did nothing to calm me. My son talked about nothing, airports, delays, weather, like we were a normal family. Every fork scrape felt like a scream. Halfway through, he placed his mug down and said casually, "I am thinking of taking him home today." The words hit like cold water. "Home?" "Yeah. He's missed enough school, missed routines. It's time." My pulse raced. "No," I said too fast. He raised an eyebrow. "No?" I steadied my voice. I mean, he's comfortable here. Let him finish the week with me. You just got back. Give yourself time to rest. A beat. You don't get to decide that, he said softly. There it was, the control. Not loud, not shouting, quiet, sharp, certain. My fingers tightened around my cup. I'm not trying to decide anything, I'm asking. He leaned back in his chair, studying me like I'd suddenly become unpredictable. You seem like this, Mom. Because there's a mattress in the shed, because there are scars on his wrists, because he whispered, don't trust him. But I couldn't say that. Not yet. You're rushing, I said instead. He stood suddenly. Well, he's my son, and I'll do what's best for him. My grandson flinched. The access roads outside were quiet. Morning birds sang. Everything in the world looked harmless. And right there, at the same table where we'd celebrated birthdays and Christmas dinners, I realized something painful. My son truly believed he was right. He believed discipline was love, control was protection, silence was obedience, and anything that challenged that, a threat. He grabbed his keys. We're leaving in an hour, pack his things. My heart hammered. No. The word slipped out before I could catch it. He froze, turned slowly. What did you say? My voice trembled, but I didn't back down. I said no, he's staying. The air thickened. For the first time, something ugly surfaced in his eyes, something not masked by charm or reassurance. You don't get to interfere, he said softly. You never did. That's why everything got messed up when I was a kid. You never followed through. The accusation landed like a slap. I swallowed. What are you talking about? He laughed bitterly. You think I don't remember? Dad screams, Dad disappears, Dad lies, and what do? You make excuses. You call it stress. You say he's tired. You keep pretending. His voice rised a little. You taught me something, Mom. You taught me that if you love someone, you don't let them fall apart. You hold them in line. My chest ached. That's not love, I whispered. He shook his head. You wouldn't understand. He moved toward my grandson. Come on, get your shoes. His breathing turned rapid. His hand reached for mine. I stepped in front again. No. My son stopped inches from me. We stood there, mother and son, and I realized this wasn't about a shed anymore. This was a battle between two beliefs. His, that control kept people safe, mine, that love required freedom, protection, safety. He leaned closer, voice low. Move. I didn't. Call the police, a voice inside me whispered. But I froze, because calling meant escalation, exposure, war. Before I could decide, there was a sudden sound. A loud knock on the door. 3 firm official taps. We both turned. My son's expression tightened. Another knock. A woman's voice called gently, Child Protective Services. The world narrowed. Time slowed. My son looked at me. Not angry. Cold. You called them. I didn't speak. He laughed once, humorless. Unbelievable. Footsteps sounded on the porch. My grandson pressed himself into my side, shaking. I walked to the door with legs that felt like glass. When I opened it, 2 people stood there, a woman with a clipboard, a man beside her, both calm, professional, careful. Good morning, the woman said softly. We received a report and need to check on the welfare of the child. My son appeared behind me. He smiled. Too big. Of course, he said warmly. Come in, we've got nothing to hide. But his eyes, when they flicked toward me,
carried a promise, not a threat out loud, a promise of consequences. I stepped aside, heart pounding, watching as the strangers entered the house, as the air shifted, as truth began to pushing its way into the space my family had filled with secrets for years. And standing there, hand wrapped around my grandson's hand, I realized the real storm wasn't outside anymore. It was inside, and it was only just beginning.
The woman from CPS knelt so she was eye level with my grandson. She didn't rush, didn't crowd him, didn't smile too much the way adults sometimes do when they're trying too hard. "Hi," she said gently. "My name is Dana. What's yours?" He glanced up at me first. I squeezed his hand. "It's okay," I whispered. He swallowed. "Eli." "That's a nice name," she said. "Do you mind if I talk to you for a little while?" He looked again to me, then nodded. My son stepped forward immediately. "I'll be right here with him." Dana stood. Her smile faded into something more neutral. "Actually, we usually talk to children privately first, just for a few minutes." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. My son's jaw tightened. "He's 8. He doesn't need privacy from his father." The man beside her, quiet until now, spoke calmly. "Sir, this is standard procedure." Silence pulsed. I could almost hear the old gears grinding inside my son's head. Charm or anger? Which one would work best? He forced a laugh. "Sure, of course. I just don't want him to feel ambushed." Dana nodded. "We'll be careful." They moved toward the living room. I watched Eli's shoulders, small, tense, as he disappeared around the corner with people who wore kindness like armor. For the first time in a long time, I felt something that resembled relief. Not safety, not yet, but possibility. My son turned slowly toward me. He didn't speak, didn't need to. The silence said enough. "You did this." He walked into the kitchen and began rinsing his mug under the sink, methodical, precise, as if scouring away fingerprints. I stayed near the doorway, my back to the wall. Minutes stretched, thin and fragile. From the living room came low voices, Dana's soft, patient questions, Eli's answers so quiet I couldn't make them out. I could hear only fragments. "Okay to say anything. You're not in trouble. Safe place." My son turned off the tap, set the mug upside down. Then he said, almost conversationally, "You think they're going to take him away?" I didn't answer. He continued anyway. "They won't. He's not neglected. He's not starving. He's not bruised. Not today, anyway." That last sentence slipped out before he could stop it. His eyes flickered. We both heard it. He leaned against the counter and rubbed his face, suddenly tired. "You don't understand what it's like, raising a kid alone, holding everything together. If I don't keep him in line, things fall apart." I felt a sting behind my ribs. "You don't need to keep him in line. You need to keep him safe." He laughed without humor. Same thing. I opened my mouth, then closed it, because arguing with someone who has welded control and love into one unbreakable thing is like trying to pry apart welded steel with your bare hands. In the living room, the voices stopped. Footsteps approached. Dana returned with Eli, his cheeks flushed, eyes glassy, but his shoulders lighter somehow. She turned to my son. "Sir, could we speak with you privately next?" He nodded, expression neutral. They moved toward the hallway. As he passed me, he murmured, "Don't say anything." It wasn't a threat. It was an instruction, the same old script from years ago when I had learned to stay quiet to keep the peace. But something in me had changed. Dana closed the door to the office. Silence again. Eli stood near me, twisting the hem of his shirt. I crouched. "You okay?" He nodded, then shook his head, then shrugged. "It's weird," he whispered. "I know." We sat on the couch together. His small body leaned into mine, like it always had when he was scared or tired or unsure of his place in the world. This time, I didn't tell him it would be okay. I'd lied that way before. Instead, I said, "Whatever happens next, I'm here." His eyes softened. We waited. 10 minutes. 15. 20. Then the office door opened. My son came out first. His face was carefully blank, too blank, the kind of emptiness that only shows up when someone is trying hard not to explode. Dana followed, clipboard held close. "Could we all sit down?" she asked. We gathered at the table, the same table where everything had come apart. She folded her hands. "I'm going to be honest with you," she said. "We have some concerns." My son exhaled through his nose. "What concerns?" She didn't flinch. "Concerns about supervision, emotional safety, possible use of isolation as discipline." He stiffened. "I never hurt him." Her gaze was steady. "I didn't say you did." Silence pressed around us. She continued carefully. "Our priority right now is to make sure Eli is in a stable, non-threatening environment while we complete our assessment. That means, for the time being, he will remain here with his grandmother." The words landed like a bell ringing through the house. My heart lurched. My son stared at her, then at me, then back at her. "You're punishing me," he said quietly. "No, we're protecting him." A storm gathered behind his eyes, dark, violent, spinning, but he swallowed it. "Fine," he said, standing. "Do what you want. You always do." He grabbed his coat from the chair, movements sharp. As he reached the doorway, he paused, turned. His voice was almost calm. "This isn't over." Then he left. The door closed. The house exhaled. For a moment, none of us moved. Then Eli started crying, not loud, not dramatic, just a soft, exhausted sound, like something finally giving way. I wrapped my arms around him and felt his tears soak into my shirt. Dana spoke quietly. "We'll be checking in regularly. There will be paperwork, interviews, maybe court. I want you both to know this can be a long process." I nodded. "I'll do whatever I need to." And I meant it. When they finally left, the house felt different. Not safer, but clearer. The secrets were gone, dragged into the light whether we were ready or not. That night, after Eli fell asleep, I stood at the kitchen window and stared at the shed. The mattress, the ropes, the silent, waiting dark. Evidence or memory? I didn't know. But I knew this. Whatever was hidden there had already shaped the boy sleeping down the hall, and if the storm had only just begun, then I would stand in it. Even if it meant losing my son. Even if it meant tearing my own heart in half. Because sometimes, love isn't the hand that holds tight. Sometimes, it's the one that finally lets go. The days after the visit from CPS blurred together, like Someone had shaken the snow globe of our lives and set the flakes endlessly falling. Forms, phone calls, interviews. Every conversation felt like peeling off another layer of skin. Eli stayed close to me, hovering in doorways, shadowing my footsteps through the house, watching the windows like he expected his father to appear at any second. And I couldn't blame him, because I was doing the same. On the third night, it happened. The knock. Not loud, not frantic, just deliberate. 3 evenly spaced raps against the front door. I froze mid-dish, water running over my hands. Eli looked up from the table, his face drained. I turned off the tap. "Stay here," I whispered. My heart climbed my throat as I walked toward the door, every instinct screaming at once, "Open, don't open, hide, run." I cracked it. My son stood there, hat pulled low, jacket zipped, jaw set. No smile this time, no charm, just a quiet, simmering storm. "We need to talk," he said. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. Cold air stung my lungs. "Not tonight," I said. "He's settling. He needs calm." His eyes flicked to the door. "I'm his calm." Something inside me snapped. "No," I said softly. "You're his fear." The words hung there, shocking even me. He blinked, then laughed, short, disbelieving. "You've let them poison you." I shook my head. "They didn't have to. I've been watching for years." He stepped closer. "Move. I'm coming in." I planted my feet. "No." A muscle ticked in his cheek. "Mom, don't do this. He's my son." "And I'm your mother," I said, voice shaking, "and I am begging you for once to listen instead of control." He stared at me. For a moment, I saw something crackle behind his eyes. Grief, maybe? Or the terrified boy he used to be when his own father came home drunk and roaring. Then it vanished. He leaned in, voice low. "They're going to twist everything. They're going to make me out to be a monster." My mouth trembled. "I'm not trying to destroy you," I whispered. "I'm trying to save him." He looked away, jaw clenching, breathing uneven. Silence stretched. Then, without warning, he brushed past me and grabbed the doorknob. I grabbed his wrist. "Please." He froze. Our eyes locked, and then, through the wood of the door, we heard it. A voice, small, shaking. "Grandma?" Eli. Not whispering, not silent, calling. My son's hand went slack. I opened the door. Eli stood in the hallway, fingers clenched around the hem of his pajama shirt, eyes shiny with tears. He looked straight at his father. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then, barely louder than a breath, Eli said, "Please, don't make me go." The world tilted. My son inhaled sharply, like someone had punched him. He managed, "What?" Eli swallowed. Words tumbled out, halting, desperate, like he was afraid they might vanish mid-sentence. "I don't like the shed. I don't like the dark. I don't like when I can't talk or move or when you say it's my fault for making noise." The night went absolutely still. My son stared at him, stunned, exposed, as if his own child had just held up a mirror. "That's not," he started, but Eli stepped back. "I was good. I tried so hard. I was quiet. I was small. I didn't tell." Each sentence was a blade. My son shook his head slowly, disbelief and panic flooding his face. "I never hurt you. I never—" "You scared me," the words broke. And with them, something inside the house broke too, some unspoken law that everything must stay under silence. My son looked at me, suddenly, desperately, like I might have an answer and escape, a way to erase what had just been said. But there was no erasing it. The truth had entered the room and shut the door behind itself. He pressed his fingers to his eyes. "I was just trying to teach you to behave, to be strong, to not be weak, like—" He cut himself. "Like me," I heard. Like himself, maybe. Eli's chin trembled. "I just wanted you to hug me." The sentence landed like thunder. My son dropped his hands. His face had gone utterly pale. For a long, agonizing moment, he looked like he might crumble right there on the floor. Then something hardened. He straightened. His voice turned flat. "I'm calling my lawyer." He turned and walked down the steps toward his car. I followed him out on the porch. "You could apologize," I said quietly. He didn't look back. "You're all against me." He opened the car door. "I'm not the villain here. You'll see." Engine, headlights, darkness carving into darkness. He drove away. I stood on the porch, shaking, listening until the sound of the car faded into nothing. Inside, Eli waited. I closed the door and leaned my forehead against the wood. Everything had shifted. Nothing was safe anymore. Not legally, not emotionally, not spiritually. But for the first time, the truth was speaking. And truth is the kind of thing that once it finds air, refuses to go underground. I turned to Eli. He was trembling. I knelt and took his hands. "You did something very brave. I'm proud of you." His eyes filled. "Is he going to be mad?" I hesitated, then told the only honest thing I could. "Maybe, but it's not your job to carry that anymore." Somewhere in my chest, a door I had kept bolted for decades creaked open. Because everything we had all been pretending not to see, the patterns, the control, the fear, were no longer shadows. They had names now, and naming things is dangerous. It's also the beginning of healing. That night, as I watched Eli sleep, every fear I had ever pressed down rose up at once. Court, custody battles, being blamed, losing my son forever. And beneath all that, something even more terrifying. What if I had created this? What if the silence he learned wasn't born from nowhere, but from me? The guilt tasted metallic in my mouth. I sat there until dawn, listening to the house breathe around us as the storm gathered outside, the real one, wind clawing the trees, and the other one, building somewhere in the distance, racing toward us, because my son wasn't done. He had just begun, and the next time he came back, I knew he wouldn't be alone. He'd be coming with lawyers, with paperwork, with accusations, and maybe with something worse. The question echoed through me. What are you willing to lose to finally protect the child who trusted you? And in the quiet, I finally understood the cost. Everything. The court date came faster than anyone promised and slower than my nerves could withstand. Weeks of waiting, weeks of walking on emotional glass, weeks of trying to build a soft world inside this house while the outside world kept knocking with letters, calls, reminders. Eli went back to school slowly, one half day at a time. Therapy twice a week. check-ins from CPS. At night, when he slept, he sometimes murmured, not words, just sounds like echoes of everything he had once been forced to swallow. I would sit beside his bed and listen, not trying to fix, not trying to silence, just listening, because silence had already taken too much from him. The morning of the hearing, rain streaked the windows. I dressed him carefully, sweater, jeans, shoes that didn't squeak, and tried not to show my shaking hands. He noticed anyway. "Are we in trouble?" he whispered. I crouched down. "No," I said, "we're telling the truth." He nodded, as if weighing that, as if deciding whether truth was worth the fear. We drove in silence. The courthouse was colder than it needed to be. Everything smelled like old paper and disinfectant and secrets. My son stood at the end of the hallway with his lawyer. He looked smaller somehow, not physically, just diminished. He didn't meet my eyes. Eli's fingers tightened around mine. We were called in. The room wasn't dramatic like television. No booming gavel, no high theatrics, just people, a judge, wooden benches, a clock that ticked too loudly. My son's lawyer spoke first, controlled, polished, insistently reasonable. Words like miscommunication, misinterpretation, overreaction. Then it was our turn. Dana spoke calmly about patterns, about emotional risk, about isolation as punishment. Then the judge asked, would the child like to speak? The air thinned. I looked at Eli. He looked up at me, and for the first time I did not answer for him. He nodded. He walked, slow, steady, to the little chair near the judge. His feet didn't reach the floor. His voice trembled, but it didn't break. "I was scared," he said. "The shed was dark. He said I was too loud. He said good boys are quiet." He paused. "I tried to be good." He blinked hard. "I don't want to be locked away anymore." Silence stretched across the courtroom like a held breath. My son stared at the table, jaw clenched, eye shining. The judge leaned forward. "Thank you," she said gently. "That took courage." Deliberation didn't take long. Temporary custody remained with me. Supervised visits only. Mandatory parenting classes and therapy for my son. No winners, no cheering, just relief braided with grief. Outside, under the gray sky, my son finally looked at me. Anger had drained out of him, leaving something raw, bewilderment maybe, or the ache of realizing the old ways no longer worked. "I didn't mean to break him," he whispered. My throat tightened. "I know," I said, "but meaning isn't the same as impact." He looked away. "I don't know how to be different." There it was, the thing buried beneath all the control. Fear. For a moment, I saw the boy he had been, standing in another doorway decades earlier, flinching at the sound of his own father's boots. "I think," I said softly, "that's where you start." He nodded once, not agreement, not surrender, just acknowledgement. Then he walked to his car with his lawyer. He didn't say goodbye, but he didn't say this isn't over either, and somehow that felt like the smallest beginning. Weeks passed. Slowly, gently, life rearranged itself. Supervised visits went awkwardly, then quietly, then better, slightly. Not perfect. There were apologies, imperfect and messy, given in pieces, like someone learning a language they were never taught. There were setbacks. There were tears. There was therapy that scraped open old scars for all of us. But there was also this, Laughter returning in small, surprising bursts. Eli learning it was safe to ask for help. Me learning it was okay to say no without apologizing. And something else, too. I stopped rehearsing silence. I stopped choosing peace at the cost of truth. One evening, months later, we sat on the back steps, watching the sunset set fire to the edges of the clouds. Eli leaned against my shoulder. "Do you think I'll ever forget the shed?" I asked. I took a breath. "No," I said honestly, "but I think one day it won't feel like it owns you." He considered that, then nodded. We watched the sky deepen, and I thought about the first night he spoke, the shock, the fear, the crack in our world that became an opening. I thought about my son, still learning, still stumbling, still caught in the gravity of his own past, and how loving him now looked different than it used to. Less rescuing, more boundaries, less silence, more truth. And I realized something that hurt and healed at the same time. Sometimes betrayal isn't a knife in the back. Sometimes it's what happens when we keep pretending broken things aren't broken. Sometimes the people we love are carrying wounds so deep they mistake control for safety. And sometimes the bravest thing we can do is refuse to keep the secret. I pressed a kiss to Eli's hair. "You're safe," I whispered. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. His breathing slowed, his shoulders loosened, and for the first time since this began, the quiet around us didn't feel threatening. It felt earned. Because survival is one thing, healing is another, and we were finally, painfully, beautifully, beginning that second part. Not perfect, not finished, but honest. And in the end, that was the real miracle. Not that he spoke, but that once the truth finally had a voice, we chose to listen.